Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spotlight webinar, Simplify and Control Print Revisions. I am Lisa Sterling, your host and moderator for today's session. Today, we are going to look at how you can quickly and easily manage print revisions. But before we get started, I would like to mention just a couple of housekeeping items. We invite you to ask questions throughout the presentation by typing in your Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, as your phone is muted during the session. We will address the questions received at the end of the presentation. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available in a few days for playback. I would now like to introduce you to our presenter for today, Tim Hogan, Vice President of Business Development for HiQA. And with that, I will turn the floor over to Tim.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This is one of our Spotlight webinars. So in our Spotlights, we take one certain aspect and kind of focus in on it to expound on a little bit. So with that being said, and the reason I bring that up is because we're going to have both customers on this call and or webinar and non-customers. So I'm going to try to hit both sides of it, and it'll maybe a little bit more relate to our current customers. So, but for our non-customers, just a couple of quick slides to introduce HiQA to you. We do have over 1,300 customers globally. We do support many different industries across this: aerospace, manufacturing, or general manufacturing, medical, automotive. We're in a lot of different environments, a lot of different, industries as well. So we're used to a lot of those different environments. We have our vision, mission, and values outlined here. But the one thing I'd really like to point out to you is down toward the bottom, it says significant domain expertise in manufacturing and quality. And that's one of the elements that really sets HiQA apart, we believe anyway, from a lot of our competitors or a lot of other products out there, is that the people that are involved in HiQA, myself included, have a lot of manufacturing and quality background. We're not just software developers. We actually came from the manufacturing industry. I myself was a quality manager, a quality engineer, a gauge engineer, actually a project engineer when I worked up in Detroit in the automotive industry. I was also a CMM programmer. And so it's all that different quality aspect and manufacturing aspect helps to roll into a product that makes sense for you and has tools that are relevant for you as well. But for existing customers, I'd like to introduce you to Scott. Scott, yeah, there he is there. Hello. So Scott is the person who you would contact about any maybe additional information about what you see today, or if you'd like to add on additional maybe licenses or functionality to your existing package, Scott is your direct point of contact for doing any of those things. So more than happy to help, and you can reach out to Scott at his email address listed here as well. So thanks, Scott.
Well, thank you.
All right, and with that, let's roll right into that. As I mentioned, this is going to be focused in on print revisions and how that works inside of HiQA. So for our prospects out there, or for our non-customers, if you will, I'd like to paint a picture of what has been done already. And for some of our existing customers, maybe you do part of this, but not all of it. So you'll get that flavor for it as we go. So for our non-customers, we have a technology called an OCR, optical character recognition. And what we do is we'll analyze a print, typically a 2D PDF. We can use a JPEG, a TIFF, things like that. And we automatically balloon it. So what you'll see here is something that was done in about 23 seconds. Okay. I actually did this last night to set this up. So clicked on our auto balloon button right here, and it automatically analyzed all of the dimensions on the print and extracted that information out. And that's the important part. Not only did we identify them on the print, but we also extracted it at the same time and populated it in what we call our bill of characteristics. Okay. So within that bill of characteristics, for both of our customers and non-customers, Important part about that is you can start to build information on that, on those dimensions already, right? Those ballooned identifications. So you can say, okay, what do we want our sampling rate to be, right? What do we want our gauge category to be? Meaning, how do we want them to measure this when it goes on to maybe the shop floor? What tool do we want our maybe shop floor operators to use when they actually take this measurement? Now, this is a generic field, right? A caliper, a micrometer, not this specific one, although you can have it be the specific one. Now, the idea behind this is actually twofold. As I just mentioned, it will help streamline the measurement process when it hits the shop floor. So it will streamline that for them. However, this information, if you have our PQP module, will also be automatically generated and populated on our control plan. So our control plan is just a couple of clicks, and that information that we put here will matter for the control plan and will automatically generate our control plan. So just want to kind of, again, outlay what's been done here, because when we go to add that second revision and we show you what that looks like, I'd like to show you what has been carried forward, what hasn't, and things of that nature. So in our manufacturing operations, so what we do, or what I've done in this already, is I've set up some operations over on the side here and identified characteristics that are affected in those different operations, right? And with doing that, we can also identify them down here in the bill of characteristics. Maybe we just want to look at a specific operation. We can do that. We have a print now for just that operation. And inside of that, what we've done is also maybe change nominals or made in process changes that we don't want on the finish, because the finished part is the finished product, right? But in process, maybe we want to change a nominal or change a tolerance or change the way we do it. Maybe we want to measure it with a caliper in process, but then with the CMM in final, something like that. We can do all of that inside of the bill of characteristics right here. And then this information, if you're using the PQP, will be automatically transferred to our control plan as well. And I keep mentioning that, so let's take a look at that very briefly. If we go to our PQP records, we can see what has been done here already. So I've already built a lot of this information. And if we look at our control plan, for example, we can see our control plan is already filled out with the information that was put in the manufacturing operations. So the point here for our customers and non-customers alike is that with HiQA's PQP functionality, what we're doing is giving you the tools to be able to automatically generate your documentation based on how you're setting the part up, which you have to do anyway, right? So we're utilizing that time and that effort to be able to automatically generate the documentation that you need for submission, as opposed to, oh, now I have to go fill out my control plan with whatever I'm doing. I have to go fill out my PFMEA. Your PFMEA, your control plan, your process flow diagram, all of those elements are automatically generated inside of HiQA based on the information, again, that was put in ahead of time. So that's kind of the groundwork. Wanted to kind of outlay a little bit. So we have a job in the system called Web1. We have some samples that we've created that were generated based on the sampling rate that was identified right here. So you see 1 per 10, 2 per lot. So when you see this, this particular job was set up for 75 parts. Okay, so you see we have a 1 per 10 sampling rate. So part number 1, 11, 21, 31, those were generated based on the frequency there. So that's how that ties together. And by the way, if you do use AQL tables, we have full AQL support and technology inside of HiQA. Okay, so that's the groundwork. Let's talk about, I have my information, I have my job, I have all this. I just got a print rev from my customer. I need to up rev everything. How does that look, and what does it look like inside of HiQA? So let's take a look. So in this, let's go over to the part property. So what are we looking at here? Right now, we're looking at a part number of this. I just named it that so we could keep it separated here. And you can see we are at Rev B. And if I look, we are at Rev B right here. Okay, so let's bring in a Rev C drawing to see what those differences are. We're simply going to come up here to our add revision and say, we're going to do a new part revision. Now with that, we also allow the functionality to be able to bring all that documentation forward, right? All of this, and let's bring it forward just so you can see what it looks like. Or you can keep it what I call mutually exclusive or completely separated. Why would you do one or the other? Well, maybe if it's production, you want to keep all your documentation the same. Maybe if it's an NPI, a new product, maybe you want to keep everything separate, a little bit more of like a prototype side. Sure. We allow you that functionality, you can, or flexibility, you can do whatever you want. Just simply put in the new rev, whatever that is, and we're going to hit OK. Now, what's happening is that our system, HiQA, is creating an exact duplicate copy of the Rev B, right? That's what's existing, and calling it Rev C. So you'll have two completely separate database entries in the database. For those that, sorry, non-customers, we're a database-driven solution. Everything that we do is Microsoft SQL database-driven. So it's all real time and live in the database whenever it's done. So what just happened, and let me show you what it looks like. If I click on open, right now we can see I have the same part number, but now I have a new rev. Now, you can turn this on, turn this off, but the way the system is set up right now is that it also creates a brand new job in the system. Now, one of the elements that's important is that sometimes your customers will maybe up rev a drawing or an EC or something like that, engineering change, maybe halfway through a job. So you can create a duplicate job with that same rev change, right? So we have a Rev B to Rev C and then that job. If you wanted to change that job number to the same, you can certainly do that, no problem at all. That way you have full traceability, right? And also documentation for when that rev changed. But we'll just leave it as is for right now. So now we are at the new rev. However, you can see right here, we're still at the Rev B drawing, right? So we still have all the documentation, all of the information, all of the bill of characteristics, the dimensions, nothing's changed yet, right? We're still at the Rev B. That's actually a good thing. So this means you don't have to start all over again. But we're simply going to come up to our add revision tab and say, I want to update my drawing. So when we say update drawing, I'm going to grab the Rev C drawing. Now you'll also get, and this is just confirming that this is the one that we want to bring in, and we'll say update. So HiQA allows for a couple different functionality, what I want to say, possibilities in the software. So a lot of times you'll get in a print from your customer and it's not quite the same, right? It's scaled a little bit differently and it's not quite exact, because what you're seeing here is that we actually overlay the two. You're seeing the Rev C drawing overlaid on top of the Rev B drawing, okay? But you can see it's a little off. That was done on purpose, okay? Because we have the tools in there to both move and scale the Rev C to match the Rev B. And that's what we're going to do right now. And it's graduated, meaning if I'm using the arrow keys right now on the keyboard and just moving this around, and you can see it moves quite significantly. However, if I zoom in, now the increments go down significantly as well. So the idea here is you want to get it as close as you can to overlaying the two. And when you do, it turns black. You can see the blue and the red. When you kind of combine them, it kind of gives you, I think it's a super dark blue or whatever, but it kind of looks black. So now I'm also going to do the same from the other side. And by the way, you kind of zero it out on the top left, and then you can use the bottom right to kind of scale it. So I'm going to use the plus and minus buttons right now. I'm just going to use minus, 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 and scale it down until I'm close, and that's close to what we want. And you could scale it however you like, whatever makes sense to you. keeping in mind that when things are different, you can easily see it. So now that we're done alignment, and it's a two-step process. There's an alignment and an adjustment mode. So we're going to say finish alignment now. And now we're in the adjust balloons mode. And let's look at those balloon numbers too. So we can click on that. And now we can see what those differences are even with the balloon numbers, or maybe we want to turn those off and you can see them right here. You can turn off maybe the old if you just want to look at the old and maybe look at the new. So, okay, what changed, what didn't. So it's a very easy way to be able to see what those differences are. Okay. But if we turn them all on, we can see that, okay, we had dimension number 3 here. That was 0.25. Maybe this is the same dimension. Maybe it's a different dimension. You would know that. I wouldn't. But let's say it's the same dimension, right? And so what happened is they moved it and changed it to a basic dimension, right? So let's move it, because sometimes they just move dimensions, right? Like, or move a view. We can handle all of those things. So let's say we just want to move this down to the new location. I'm actually going to expand it a little bit further over top of the basic. Okay. And now we can see this is the old, right? That's the existing. Now, if I right click and say parse, it goes through a quick calibration sequence. But after that, it's going to update it with whatever the new revision is. Okay, we can see that change now over on the side, and the basic is adjusted. Now, if you need to keep your data separate and you need to keep the basic different from the, absolutely, delete it, add it as a new dimension, whatever you need to do. In fact, let's do that on this second one right here, because they changed the dimension on us, right? They went from 0.50 and now the new one is 0.45. Right. Well, that's a change to the nominal. Chances are you don't want that to happen in your database, right? It's like, whoa, that's different. I can't have my nominals line up and it'll change my statistics. It'll change my report. It'll change everything. Right. So in this case, maybe you'd want to delete this out and add a new dimension. You would simply right click and say, I want to delete that. Actually, there's probably 5 ways to delete it, but that's one of them. And then we're going to use our manual balloon functionality here and add that, right? So we added that as a separate balloon. And now you can see this is the updated number, the 0.45, and it's dimension number 25. All right, I want to bring that up because it was added to the end. And if we look right here, we can see there's dimension 25. It was added to the end. And if we look ahead of all of these are all padlocked, meaning those are locked dimensions that can't be changed because they're linked to that previous rev, right? So it's not going to allow us to change that. Now, if you remember, that was dimension number 4, right? So if I come up and hit renumbering right now, it's going to say you have locked dimensions and those are not going to be renumbered. So if we look, that didn't change from 25. In fact, if we go up to our numbering and say, I want to edit my lock numbers, right? We can see that dimension 4 is in the lock number section. So we can't use dimension number 4 again because it was used in a previous rev. Okay, so that's how you can add dimensions to it without having to worry about kind of overstepping the previous revision. Okay, so let's cancel out of that. Let's say there's a change right here. Now that's just a tolerance change. And if whoever's doing this change, quality engineer, quality manager, whomever is saying, oh, that's fine. Let's just update that and let's keep the same balloon number. Okay, great. You can actually move this around, maybe to capture that new dimension and then say parse. And then when we parse it, sorry. Need to update it. You can see it when we parsed it, it analyzed it to the new revision and then updated that, and also updated down here in the bill of characteristics to the new tolerance that was listed on there. So we're just kind of stepping through this and doing whatever we need to do. This dimension was in fact removed because it was on the old one, but not on the new one. So we just need to delete that one. We hit delete. And now it's gone. And now dimension 24 is completely gone. And then we don't have to worry about that. Okay. And then whenever we're complete with that and done, we just simply come down here and say, I'm going to finish my revision. And now it updates to the new Rev C, right? So we have our Rev C drawing now listed here with all of those changes that were in that Rev C drawing. But another kind of neat thing about HiQA and the functionality for revisions is that we still maintain that link to the previous revision. So even if you come down or come into the software, whatever, a month later, 6 months later, a year later, whatever, you could say, wait a minute, what was changed in this? And you can even look at that merged view to say, oh yeah, that changed, that dimension changed, that's when that changed. So now you have kind of documentation, or at least a reference to go back to say, okay, what changed and when did it change and how did it change? So that's that. So what all came forward? So when we selected the add revision, we did say we wanted to bring all of this information forward. So what does that mean and what does it look like? So first part is that we have all of our documentation still consistent, right? It's still in the database. It's still from what it was before. The sampling rates, the gauge categories, all that information is the same. All right. If we go into our samples, here's our same samples, right? So this is the same information, same sample numbers. Those were brought forward. Now the data, right? The data is different because this is a new rev, but just the sample numbers and everything was brought forward as well. So even in our PQP, we check the box that says bring forward that PQP documentation. So our information here was brought forward as well. We don't have to go redo all of this information. It's just updated to the part rev. However, if there is something that maybe needs to be flagged to say, wait a minute, this is the old and be careful, you may not want to submit that with the new revision. I'll give you an example of that. If we click on our FAI, we're going to go into the FAI, and keep in mind, this was the previous rev, right? This is Rev B. So we have a big flag here that says, wait a minute, we called a template. Maybe not the best name for it, but anyway, it's just to say, hey, this is the template form. Is this what you want to use or not? This may not be because it's not up to the latest rev, right? So it's basically a flag that says, hey, be careful of this. It may not be what you want it to be. Okay. So we have all of that information. And again, that's all brought forward with the rev change. So the overarching comment is simply, you don't have to redo everything, re-balloon it, reanalyze it, redo all your documentation, redo your inspection plans. You can simply carry it over and then update it to the new rev and then track what those changes are. So that's how rev control is pretty much handled inside of HiQA. Love to open it up now to any questions and answers we might have.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. Okay, we've had several questions come in throughout the presentation. And again, we invite you to still ask questions. You can go ahead and type in your Q&A tab at the bottom there. So let's get started. The first question that came in. For new revisions, do I need to completely re-balloon the drawing?
No. So just like we showed you, all you need to do is click on that new rev, and it's going to maintain that old revision. And then we put we overlay the new revision right on top of the old one. Okay, so you don't have to re-balloon it. You just simply need to identify what those changes are and then kind of balloon those changes, if you will.
Okay, great. Here's another one. Do you have software that supports 3D model-based definition workflows?
Yes, that is a totally different question than what we addressed here. But yes, we do have the functionality to be able to bring in a 3D model. And assuming that you're talking about one that has MBD or PMI information in it, model-based definition, GD&T, dimensions, and all of that listed right on the model itself, we can automatically read that using it's called the UID in the CAD model itself to identify each of the characteristics. And then we put that into the database as well. So yes, we certainly support that. It's different than rev control, but please reach out and we'd be happy to kind of show you what it is.
Okay, perfect. Here's another one. Does the HiQA software interact/link with metrology software?
Assuming you mean metrology software along the lines of like a CMM software, like a PCDMIS or Calypso or something like that, or Polyworks, something like, or Keyent system, any of those, yes. So what happens is we can automatically bring that information in. Can kind of give you a rough kind of overlay of what it looks like. We have a machine synchronization tab up here. And then what happens is we set up a file folder in your system to be able to, that we can listen to. And then as your let's call it a CMM, as your CMM finishes, it would save that information to that folder location. And we would simply bring in any file that hit that location. And then that's what you're looking at here. Here's 30 samples that were imported from a CMM, from PCDMIS exact, for example, right into the software. And that's all a background running operation. You don't have to actively do that. That happens automatically in the background. So yes, if that's what you mean by quality software, yes, we can bring information in from that measurement software automatically.
Okay, the questions keep rolling in. Thanks, you guys. Here's another one. Is there an ability to connect a PLM repository of drawings and models versus using Windows Explorer?
This is using Windows Explorer. We do have an open API to be able to communicate to outside, like an ERP or PLM or an MES system. So that would probably be done through our API. So kind of yes, but it would be a little different avenue as to probably maybe what you're thinking of for the revision control.
Okay, here's another question. When changing bubble dimension, would we have to update our CMM program? Example, bubble number 4 to bubble number 25.
Oh, okay. Yes and no. Or yeah, I should say yes or no. You don't have to, but we do need to relink, because what you did or what was done with the, obviously with the new revision, we've lost that link, right? So the information came in, it was dimension number 4, and now it's dimension number 25. If it's easier for you to go in and change your CMM program to 25, go for it. If you would like to, we do have a results mapping file. So actually, I don't have any results here. Let me go into my previous one. I did have some results here. Let me look into sample number 1 here. So these are the results that were brought in that we simulated from a CMM that were brought in. And by the way, this is just a view. This isn't the report. You can just view and see what the dimensions look like directly on here. However, if you do go into our results mapping, now what this does is it shows you all the results that came in from the CMM file. And then what happens is you can actually map it. So you can map the new or the old dimension 4 that's from, like this one, for example, here's dimension 4 that came from the CMM. And then you could like remap it to the dimension 25. So you can kind of create that link inside of HiQA, or you can do it in your CMM program. Either way, it's kind of up to you.
Okay, here's the next question. Does HiQA have any revision control of the inspection plans themselves?
So there's 3 elements that we use to kind of, let's call it triangulate lock in that inspection plan itself. We use the part number, the part rev, and the job number. So if any of those 3 things change, as I mentioned before, when I hit open, we have the job, the rev, and the part number right there. So if you do change anything, you can track changes that way if you'd want to. Okay. Another way to do it, so it's a little bit different because a lot of, and I could be wrong in your specific case, but a lot of times when people are looking at it, they're like, hey, I have my control plan and that's locked to a rev. If I change anything, I need to up rev my control plan. If that's the case in what you're asking about, that's actually done a little bit differently. And it's a different concept of how we do it inside of HiQA. And what I mean by that is that in our PQP records, we have our control plan listed right here. So this control plan is linked to the information from the bill of characteristics, right? So you have all your information here, both from the manufacturing operations and from the bill of characteristics, what your specs are, what the evaluation technique is. Let me scroll over here just for a second. What the sampling rates are, what the sampling sizes are. So all of that information is captured. So once that is locked, it goes through a workflow. I know we're talking about a lot of stuff that we haven't explained, so I do apologize for that. But all this document itself, this control plan, will need to go through an approval workflow. Okay. Once it's approved, it's locked in the system. It can't be changed unless we create a document revision. So in that case, that could be a way to do what you're talking about. You're kind of locking in that control plan to that set inspection plan, if you will. But then if there's a change, we need to up-rev the control plan. That way we can see what changed, who changed it, what happened, because anything that happens in our system, we do keep track of changes of anything that was done, whether it's in the workflow, whether it's in the history. We keep full workflow history of what's been done in the document itself, if it was changed, if it was modified, what was done. Any revisions are notated right here. We're still on revision 1 on this. So we can track revisions from the control plan this way. If you are talking about, hey, I want to track every single time I change something in the bill of characteristics, because that's essentially the inspection plan, that gets a little dicey. Technically, yes, but it's actually a log of the database and we don't want to go there. So hope that answers your question.
Okay, perfect. Let's conclude with this last one here. Can you update PQP documents to incorporate changes, or will they have to be redone?
So it depends on everything that was done. Let's say you had a new process that you needed to add or something along those lines. Those aren't automatically like, I changed this process in the manufacturing operation based on the part revision. So I need to, it just, automatically poofs and updates the PFMEA, for example. Not quite. It's if there are no changes, it's going to bring, excuse me. Yeah, okay. It brings forward everything that's from the previous revision. However, let's say, wait a minute, there's a change and the PFMEA does need to be updated. Simply come over here. This is the document instance. This is a link to it right here. But let's say you had the FMEA and let's say you're just going to kill that. So you can kill the PFMEA and then simply rebuild it. And rebuilding the PFMEA is an extremely easy process. So we can go through it and say, okay, what's our workflow? Who's responsible? We can add that later as well. Any template that you want for the FMEA. And then we're going to say complete. And what it does, it'll grab the new information or maybe the new process, the new manufacturing operation, whatever, and then rebuild our PFMEA inside of the PQP index. Okay, so it's not that hard to redo it, even if you do need to redo it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Tim, and thank you to the audience for spending the 30 minutes with us. As we mentioned at the beginning of the session, this is a spotlight webinar, so we do try to keep it to about 30 minutes. We know that your time is valuable. If there are any questions that come to mind later on, please feel free to reach out. You can see our email is there, info@highqa.com, as well as our website. If you would like to have a personalized demonstration, if this is piqued your interest, please reach out. Also on our website, you can request a one-on-one session right there. So as I mentioned also, I will be sending out the recording in the next couple of days in case you would like to watch the playback or share it with your colleagues. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.